This video is part 3 in a series about bridge battle macro, so I will assume you understand the previous parts for this one. The previous parts covered the early and mid game, so this one will be about the late game, which is the final bridge showdown. I am narrating over one of my solo queue games where we trade the side bridges very fast and enter an extended late game. And I'll talk about my thoughts on the late game as the early and mid games play out. In the late game, we have to evaluate risk and reward differently from other parts of the game, because usually players will have more advanced builds. You can be punished much harder for dying because the enemy team has speed or block upgrades to rush the bridge while you're dead and can't shoot. You can be punished much harder for getting trapped because many more blocks behind you are broken from mythic bow shots and you can stay trapped for longer. The general rule of thumb is that the team that lands more kills and more traps in the late game is the one that's most likely to win because of how punishing deaths and traps are. Because staying alive is so important, I like to think of my own bridge in terms of zones of safety. The tip of the bridge is the least safe because you're in danger from shots aimed at all parts of the bridge. Shots aimed behind you can trap you, shots aimed at your feet can cause you to fall, and shots aimed at you will just kill. In contrast, the base of the bridge is a lot less risky, although it's not totally safe. Opponents are less likely to aim at you and miss the bridge, and it's usually worse to hit the base of the bridge since it can be rebuilt very quickly. With that in mind, how does that affect our macro in the late game? Since there's only one bridge, we don't get to choose which bridge to build and shoot, but the most important choice becomes when. The single mistake that's the biggest from newer and intermediate players is repeatedly rushing the bridge without regard for timing, especially when taking risks by going down a longer bridge. Tracking bow cooldowns is harder during the late game, but instead of tracking who has bow shots available, it's easy to count how many opponents have the cooldown. The easiest tip here is to wait until 2 arrows have hit the bridge in close succession, because during that window, there can be at most 1 bow shot aimed at you, which is a lot lower risk than 2 shots. Now in this game, both teams have just cleaned the chest, which triggers the start of the late game. I prioritize buying a bow upgrade immediately because kills and traps are so important. Because I don't have max speed yet, I try not to run past the halfway point on the bridge, unless I know that the enemy team has bows on cooldown, or somebody on the enemy team is dead. The first trap here coming up is going to demonstrate the concept of zones of safety. Although we ran up the bridge at the same time, because my teammate was further up, they ended up getting trapped. It also is worth mentioning that because they're trapped so far up, it becomes a lot harder to save them from the trap. So we end up not even managing to save them at all. Now I'm a few cycles away from reaching max speed, and getting speed upgrades expands the zones of safety, because you can dodge bow shots easier and spend less time on the most dangerous parts of the bridge. It's also worth noting that for the most part, I shoot my bow only when I'm off the bridge, and a lot of the time I will run to the side of the bridge to line up a diagonal shot, because diagonal shots break more blocks and have a higher chance of landing a trap. The side of the bridge is also a relatively safe zone because very few people shoot there. Now I'm going to talk about the strategy that party cats, an player on the enemy team, will use in this game. And this is using the completed bridge to line up better angles and to get closer to the enemy team. Closer shots are much harder to dodge because the arrows fly in the air for much less time period, and shooting at a sharper angle provides a higher chance of trapping. This comes with some trade-offs though, because being closer means it's harder for you to dodge and return, and getting trapped on the completed bridge can be a huge liability. Now, as the late game continues to play out, I'm going to be focusing my shots on the bridge while getting safe econ. In this game, I don't go for many kill shots because I noticed that my teammates have been going for them, and multiple players missing the bridge can be game ending. As I reach 150 gold, I will have to make a choice about whether to upgrade to the mythic bow or 15 blocks. When I reach that point, I see that a teammate has died, so I make the snap decision to go for the bow instead, to hold onto the bridge for longer. Which upgrade you choose in your games will be contextual like this one, so it'll depend on the state of the game which upgrade is more correct. As play continues, keep an eye on the right bridge, because Partycast is going to make a couple of game-winning plays for his team. Although he makes one shot just to stall, he is going to land a very sick trap here coming up soon. This next shot coming up, he's going to drop one player and trap another. I rush to try and free the other player, but end up falling instead. This ends up becoming a team wipe, which lets the enemy team get really far ahead in terms of block placement. As play continues, continue looking at this right bridge. Party Cats is going to line up another shot here, which ends up getting a trap. I try to place my blocks behind me, but it's to no avail, and we get team wiped again. This is going to end with the enemy team winning the game. Although the endgame scoreboard might make it seem like a typical late game, where more kills and traps wins the game, what really won the game there was the intentional macro play to use that complete bridge to land those kills and traps.